Welcome back. I'm Michael Bull, and this is the Commercial Real Estate Show. If you'd like to know the absolute latest on any commercial real estate related subjects, check out our on-demand show podcasts. For example, we have some very informative shows on Twitter and LinkedIn. There are lots of shows to choose from. Just grab your smartphone, tablet, or computer and visit iTunes or the show website, commercialrealestateshow.com. Well, today we're talking about social media strategies that work. And we're talking about things that work and that don't work with Les Atkins with Orange SMS. And before the break, we started talking about strategies. And part of those strategies is looking at the various platforms. So how do you know which platforms to work and where your customers really are?
So it depends again on your strategy. We talk a lot about strategy and understanding who your audience is. So those are the first two keys, is know who your audience is and where they are. So for example, we talk about the top three, right? So you've got LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. And there's been a lot in the news lately about who's better and you know how much is an individual worth on that platform. But one of the things is that people need to keep in mind, it's truly about what your business does. We were talking during the break about how, you know, from a commercial real estate point of view, pictures are involved, a lot of pictures. And so Instagram would be a really good one for from a commercial real estate
And some people may not think about that.
Yeah, some people might not think about Instagram, or they might not think about Tumblr or Flickr or some other ones that have actually created. And interestingly enough, you know, October 2013, there was a top 15 that came out, and number 5 was MySpace. So we forget about MySpace, but MySpace has gone back to their roots from a perspective of music, more indie, understanding that what made them the big in the first place.
So when I sing in the shower, I should load it to MySpace?
Yeah, you should load it to MySpace and see how many hits you get. So, but one of the things is, you know, if you're trying to find an audience and you know truly who your audience is, then it will help you choose the platform. And I think the biggest challenge that businesses have is that there's so many platforms out there that they're using a shotgun effect and like, okay, well, which ones, you know, I don't know which ones are going to work for me. And the reason why they don't know which ones are going to work for them is because they really don't know their audience. I mean, if you ask 10 business owners or 10 executives who their audience actually is, that's one of the most difficult questions they have to answer, because you get answers like, everyone's our audience. Well, everyone can't be your audience. You know, it's like, so, well, no, everyone is our audience. Okay, well, what are the segments of your audience? You know, things of that nature, whether it's B2C or B2B. And so what have you found from a perspective? I know that you do a lot and have been doing a lot on platforms and things like that. So what platforms have you found that work for you?
You know, we use LinkedIn a good bit, and we use LinkedIn groups. And we also use Twitter a lot. I really personally enjoy Twitter.
Yeah.
I think I get more from it than I provide to it.
Right.
As far as entertainment and interest and business information, you know. So I like those. And one that really surprised us, I spoke at a large event a couple weeks ago, and when I got back, James told me that our Facebook was lit up.
Yeah.
And that really surprised me that people interested in commercial real estate are really on Facebook.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, so your audience may change, but here's where it comes. Here's where the audience becomes so important. So there are a ton of, you know, we forget about Google Analytics, and it's free, and it gives you so much information. And the point is that you really need to understand not only who your audience is, but where your audience is looking for what information. So, for example, we mentioned Pinterest, and we talked about that it's majority women, right? And that's changing, but right now it's still a majority women. So the biggest
make a note of that. That's where the women.
That's
are.
where the women
Okay,
are. Yeah, that's where
for
all you single people out there. That's
just
where the
kidding,
women are.
honey.
But the point is that we forget, like you mentioned, LinkedIn groups. There's also Google Plus groups. We forget that within these platforms are very focused groups that are looking for specific things. There's photography, there's real estate, there's singles meetup, there's you know, over 50 meetup, there's all these different things that actually, from a perspective of platforms, where you, depending on the information you're putting out there, depending on what you want to accomplish from that, will totally depend on your platform. So if you're trying to hit tweens, meaning 15 and under, and you're doing a marketing or social media campaign on Facebook, they're not there.
They're not there anymore.
They're not there anymore.
Because their parents are there.
Because their parents are there, and it's called creeping, and they got
Right.
creeped out, so they left Facebook. Now, they still have profiles, so I get this argument all the time.
Yeah.
Well, I see them on there. They're on there. They have profiles
they're
on
not
there, but they're not
using
using it.
Yeah.
So they're posting exactly very small things, so their parents still think they're there, but they're using other ones like Twitter and things of that nature that are other platforms. So it truly depends on who your audience is as to what platform you choose. And so the biggest thing is knowing your audience. We always go back to that. And people go, well, wait a minute. This person over here tells me that they can get me a great convergence rate on Facebook. Probably can, but again, it depends on your audience. Yeah. Over here, you've got this person who's going to train me on how to use LinkedIn. Well, we've kind of segmented in the social media world about different specialties. And my argument is, if you only hire someone that knows LinkedIn, and let's say your audience is on LinkedIn, but here's the thing about social media. Audiences move. Mm-hmm. So if they move off LinkedIn and you hired somebody or work with somebody who only knows LinkedIn, then when they move off of there, you got to hire somebody else. Right. If you have an overarching strategy that helps you understand that social media is fluid, then you can make that strategy fit and follow your audience as opposed to trying to make it work in one platform where your audience either was or is or may not be anymore.
So what happens, Les, if a lot of your audience is on Twitter and you're not aware of that or you haven't bothered with it and you're not on Twitter?
If your audience is on Twitter and you're not aware of it, guess what? They don't do business with you.
You don't exist to
them. You don't exist
right?
to them. Well, it's kind of like from the perspective we talked earlier in our last panel we were just on about mobile. Mm-hmm. You know, so many businesses don't even have their websites mobily enhanced. Mm-hmm. And that's such an easy thing to do nowadays, as let alone have an app or an actual mobile application.
And I want to talk some more about that, but before this segment's over, I also want to ask you about Google Plus.
Yeah.
And you talk about where your customers are and which ones should you use. How important is Google Plus?
So I think maybe you said it, you need Google juice. Mm-hmm. So it's changing a little bit from the last time we spoke about Google Plus. Mm-hmm. So Google Plus, though, if you're not using Google Plus, they take their own medicine, meaning that if you're really active on Google Plus, the chance of you getting a little bit better on the search engines, things of that nature.
Yeah, go figure. Google likes Google Plus.
Google likes Google Plus. However, they've recently come out and said that that's not the case, that it's based off of a completely different algorithm. However, I've seen, just from experience, that people that are using it on Google Plus are usually the ones that are getting some of the hits on their search engine. But yeah, Google Plus actually did come out and negate that, called it a myth because of the fact that they changed their algorithm. I think they didn't want to be known as Google likes Google Plus.
And what about YouTube? We're short on the break here, but
YouTube
important?
Second biggest. Why do you think they just got purchased by Google? Mm-hmm. And why do you think Google purchased them? Because they were the second largest search engine coming up on Google's heels. Mm-hmm. People were going to YouTube first to find things and not going to Google.
Yeah.
So YouTube is we're a very visually oriented society and a very visual oriented group of people. So YouTube is great because you literally can find anything on there, from making a casserole to how to start a business.
Right. Okay, well, that's interesting. Well, another thing that some people say is, I don't have time for social media. So we'll get into that and more social media strategies that work. I'm Michael Bull. This is the Commercial Real Estate Show. We'll be right back. The Commercial Real Estate Show is brought to you by your friends at Bull Realty, France Medio, Atlanta Office Liquidators, and Wiseman, Nowak, Curry, and Wilco. For more information about these companies or to access additional show podcasts, videos, or blogs, visit commercialrealestateshow.com.